People do incredible things if their honor is endangered. For example, every year, an estimated 5,000 women worldwide are killed by their father or brother because they had ruined the honor of the man and his family. For example, if the girl refused to marry the man pre-arranged by her parents. Until the 1950s on the Greek island of Crete, if a young woman would have pre-marriage sex, she had destroyed the honor of the family. So in order to restore the honor of the family, she was to be murdered, i.e. that meant her brother had the duty to butcher her with a knife in the arms of her mother. And that's Europe, Christian Europe until the 1950s. So worldwide still about 5,000. It is no coincidence that initiation in militaristic cultures and subcultures often start inductees being humiliated. They're put into shame, and their subsequent efforts to restore their honor through violence are then used by the military leaders for their own purposes. They're sort of harvested and used. The feelings of unworthiness may also be compensated with grandiose fantasies or idealization of a person, group, or nation. If I'm identified with my great country, I don't have to feel how unworthy I feel myself. Another defense mechanism is perfectionism. The message is, only if I'm perfect, I cannot be put down. I can only be loved when I have performed great achievements, or if I have a perfect wife, perfect son, perfect car, etc. There are more defense mechanisms such as addiction, for example. The story of the Little Prince, there's this situation when the Little Prince talks with the alcoholic, and he says, summarizing, I'm drinking because I'm so ashamed, and I'm so ashamed because I'm drinking. So there's this repetitive cycle. So these are some of the most important defense mechanisms that shame is being warded off with. Obviously, unconscious, defended shame is poisoning our relationships with arrogance, humiliation, cynicism, violence, etc., etc. Social scientists have explored that the social functions of shame and its defense mechanisms, and have concluded that they are a commonly used means to establish status, power, and powerlessness. Because shame is such a painful and unconscious emotion, it has the potential to be easily utilized. One kind of power consists of the ability to force others to feel ashamed. This works in youth gangs, bullying, works at work, but also in politics. And I like to illustrate this with excerpts from one of our interviews with a Nazi follower. The following passage is abbreviated by about 50%. The interviewee, let's call him Mr. Plesner, was born in 1918 in a small town near the Rhine River, which was the boundary to France. There, the Rhine is about 1,000 feet wide. On the opposite side of the Rhine was the French fortification wall, the so-called Maginot Line, which was guarded by French soldiers. In the following excerpt, Mr. Plesner switches between two different frames, the years before and after 1933, that is, the time before and after Hitler came to power. This is how Mr. Plesner's story begins. Quote, "We, the youth, went through life with open eyes, really open eyes. Remember 1932, Adolf Hitler's visit to the nearby city of Freiburg. He passed by us, the whip in his hand, and he looks each person in the eyes. That was very impressive. Of course, we had put all of our ideals into him. Imagine that life in the village was simple, modest. When the children came home from school, there was just a note on the table. You take the hoe and go to such and such place. And late in the evening, the children were so tired they fell asleep on their chalkboards. The mother said, Now you go to bed and tomorrow morning you will quickly do your homework that the teacher is satisfied. Everything was in a bad state. And then National Socialism came. We experienced sports, camping out. The youth was inspired and had a meaning. For us, this was a liberation. Suddenly one could be proud to be German. We lived near the Rhine River. At school, we wrote dictation to the sound of the French military signal horns. On the bunkers of the Maginot Line, the Senegalese Negroes were standing in their grey uniforms with their scars in their faces and looking over to us like evil spirits. And that impressed us very much. Germany was the pariah among the peoples. We knew that we had to experience much, much, much evil because of the dictates of the Versailles Treaty, which ended World War I. Even more shame was the consequence of the worst crimes in human history committed by us, Germans. The Holocaust and the million-fold war crimes of the German army. I want to suggest that all of this shame has seeped deeply into today's German society, and the defenses against this shame are still continuing to latently poison our relationships. Certainly, Germany has become more friendly during the past decades. Our constitution states in its very first paragraph, quote, "The dignity of man is inviolable," unquote. This is great. I'm really proud of this. However, the dignity of men and women is being violated every day. Just enter the German Autobahn with a weak vehicle. Within moments, you will receive all kinds of scornful gestures. A French journalist once wrote, quote, "We're not resenting the Germans drive Mercedes, but we're resenting the way they are driving Mercedes." Shame and its defense is everywhere. It has become such an inherent part of our society that we often don't recognize this legacy. For example, when senior citizens are regarded as, quote, "scrap metal," that's a quote from a member of the previous German government. There were no big protests against that. Or when the unemployed are described as lazy parasites and garbage. You can read that every day in the paper. Or when the East Germans are regarded as ineffectual bums from West Germans. Teachers, like no other profession probably in Germany, are put to shame by the public, by parents, by students, by politicians, such as former Chancellor Helmut Schröder, for example, who called teachers lazy dogs, quote. Or also by most media. For example, the reputable magazine Der Spiegel repeatedly characterized the teachers as, quote, "failures, second-raters, fearful, timid, labil, dumb, lazy, and sick," unquote. Not only teachers, but also many children experience humiliation. It is estimated that 80% of all children in Germany are beaten by their parents, 10% are beaten heavily. It is estimated that about 5 to 10% of our children experience sexual abuse. About 20% of our children are being bullied by classmates. And about 30% of German pupils are repeatedly humiliated by their teachers. Another 30% are occasionally humiliated by teachers. This way, shame is passed down from generation to generation. That's why I made this boiling game. Passed down from parents, from teachers to students, some of whom will grow up and become teachers themselves. It's like a liquid which is being poured down from one glass into another, etc., etc. Therefore, it is no surprise that German schools are rated quite poorly in international comparisons. How could school possibly succeed as long as so many students and so many teachers are humiliated so much?